Your Royal Highness, Prime Minister, distinguished guests, on behalf of the Conference Organising Committee, I warmly welcome you to this opening session of ONS 2016. For more than 40 years, ONS has been a key global meeting place here in very beautiful Stavanger. It's a summit for industry leaders, it's an exhibition, it's a conference for the whole of the global energy industry. But it's also a very important place to do business. ONS has always had the traditional role of showcasing oil and gas technology here on the Norwegian shelf, and that purpose remains at the core of this conference. But over the last 40 years, our world has become much more complex, interdependent, and interlinked. And this ONS conference, whilst keeping its traditional role, will examine this increased global complexity under the theme of transition. We'll look at it in three ways: the transition to the new, more challenging, lower margin world, the transition to a more sustainable global economy, and also the transition required in leadership mindsets to cope with this new complexity. This new global complexity is such that what happens to gas demand on the other side of the world in China affects gas margins here in Europe. And what happens with technology application in what seem like remote places sitting here in Stavanger, like North Dakota and South Texas, has literally changed not only the margins, but also the business models for every oil producer. We are compelled to examine this complexity. Norway may be a small northerly nation, but it is a nation at the heart of this complexity. Norwegian gas is at the heart of the European energy security debate. Norwegian innovation is in a leading position in offshore engineering and technology. Norwegian oil and gas has some of the lowest CO2 footprints in the world. And the Norwegian sovereign wealth funds, based on oil and gas receipts, are some of the largest, most transparent, and well managed in the world. Be in no doubt, Norway punches above its weight in so many ways. I wish I had time to summarize all the fascinating speakers and sessions that we have ahead of us in this conference. But instead, I will just concentrate on one of the conference sessions, and I will make a few personal reflections based on almost 15 years as an employee at Statoil, and based on my own professional background in strategy, business development, mergers, acquisitions, and deal doing. And the session I want to dwell upon is the one tomorrow morning in the plenary session, the long-term prospects for the Norwegian continental shelf. This is a really great time for all of us to reflect on this, since this is the 50th anniversary of the commencement of oil and gas activity here in Norway. Since I joined Statoil, I've been hugely impressed, indeed stunned, by the constant ability of the shelf to reinvent itself. So far, 72 billion barrels of oil equivalents have been discovered here. And if you look at the period 1986 to 2015, we've had an annual average discovery rate of about 700 million barrels of oil equivalents every year. Truly impressive. But the data shows that in the more recent period, if you look at 2006 to 2015, we've in fact had only a 50% resource replacement rate. And so, as the shelf gets older, some things begin to change. Every petroleum province is like every human being. At some point, they transition from the vigorous growth of youth to a pace that's slightly different as you approach 50. Experience I've had myself. Despite the massive recent discoveries like Sverdrup and Castberg and others, we do need to also examine what does this replacement rate mean? Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not suggesting that there won't be plenty of exciting and large new discoveries here on the shelf, not only in the Barents and eventually the Lofoten, but also in the traditional areas with tiebacks. We just had an announcement of a new discovery called Brasa in the Oseberg area recently. But for me as a strategist and deal doer, I think the next period will also be about different business models based on different ownership structures that inevitably come to mature areas. I think we're going to have to introduce a new adaptability as to what diversity of ownership on the NCS really means. Let me explain why I say that. Some large traditional players of the last 50 years have already left Norway for all sorts of different reasons. And just this year, we've had one of the larger IOCs change the structure of its business, not by leaving, but by merging it into a smaller company and becoming a minority investor. I believe we'll see more of this in the coming period, and I believe that the financial character and requirements of shareholders that sit behind this sort of change will be different to some of the larger players. So I think all of us in the shelf, both in government and regulation and business, will have to think carefully, what does that mean? I think it might mean we have to think about different ways of looking at tax transfers in asset deals. I think we'll have to think further about financial structures for decommissioning and abandonment. I think we'll have to think about more collaborative and transitional models for operatorship. And I think we'll see more complexity and contingency structures in payments when asset transfers and business transfers are made. So the shelf will have plenty of exploration prospectivity, but it will also have the transition to maturity, and that will require new thoughts about diversity of ownership on the shelf. I'd like to say how exciting and rewarding it has been personally to work so closely with the ONS administration, not least with the very lovable Leif Johan Sevland and his fantastic team, Ingvild and Cato and all the team. I'm so grateful to you for asking me to assist you in this work, and now the day is here. And finally, on behalf of the ONS administration, I would like to thank the Norwegian royal family, Your Highness, for 40 years of support of this organization. We're all very grateful to it and for the sustained way in which your family has supported it. And so, please join me now in welcoming the first speaker of our conference, His Royal Highness Prince Haakon of Norway. Thank you.